Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ohio State Primetime Live here at the Voice of College Football. I'm your host, Garrison Gaddy. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And just to make sure if you haven't already, please be sure to go to our website. That is bocfb.com, where you can also check out everything that we have, whether it be our writers and also the hosts of our other channels, whether it be North Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, or even the team up north, family, friend, or foes. We have it all here for you here at the Voice of College Football. Also, if you just happen to miss this or you're not able to watch it here live on YouTube or just roaming around the car, you can also listen to us on any audio platform, whether it be Spotify, Amazon, or Apple. Everybody, fall camp has started here, and this is probably my favorite time of the year outside of the actual season starting. Being the football person that I am, I remember back when I was playing football over at the University of St. Francis. Shout out to the Cougars. This time of the year, everyone's ready to get going. Honestly, you can feel it in the air. Well, it's a little hot here still in the Midwest, but you can tell that that fall is coming. And you can also tell that by all the news that we are getting for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And here today, we have a special guest, Dillon Davis of the Delaware Gazette, and will be joining us. And Dillon, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you having me on. Always love talking Buckeye football, and you're absolutely right. You're starting to feel it a little bit in the air. It's been a little bit crisp. The last few days that we were at the Woody for practice in the mornings, it was a little cool. As a matter of fact, I wore quarter zips in 2 of those days, so it just felt right wearing a quarter zip to go watch the Buckeyes practice. So we're getting so close, man, and so excited.
And what are those throwing at? 9 a.m.?
Yeah, around give or take 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually on the field probably 8:45 for some early stretches and stuff, and then it gets underway at 9 a.m.
Well, let's get going here. So the first thing I want to ask you about, we'll start with the offense here, then we'll go to the defense. What are your takeaways right now? I guess what everyone in the nation, not just Buckeye Nation, is talking about when it comes to the quarterback battle, Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sand. What are you seeing on the field? What are your takeaways, and what are the coaches saying?
Yeah, I know nobody wants to hear it. We don't want to hear it when Ryan tells us this, but it is still very, very early to make a whole lot of evaluations of this. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times where, there are things you can draw from, and as they get into this first full week of camp now, and camp picks up, the pads are on. I believe they'll have their first scrimmage day on Saturday. It's starting to become evaluation period time for sure. But just from what we've seen in the first few practices, they both had their moments. Look, that's just the way it is. They've had their moments where, one guy has really put a strong foot forward, and then the next day maybe it was the other one. On Saturday, which is the most recent practice we've seen, it was Julian who had the better day of the two. I don't think anybody would argue that Julian had a better day. We saw the whole practice start to finish, which they finished with a team portion where it's, for the most part, good on goods. And Julian had a pretty strong showing in that, and had a strong showing earlier in the day as well in the 7-on-7 portions and things like that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that anything has happened, that one is taking a significant stride forward in the job, or is starting to separate. But certainly our last impression was, from Julian having the better day of the two. And look, I know me personally, I still think that it's Julian's job to lose. I don't think the margin's significant that Lincoln can't go win that job with a strong couple weeks and a strong showing in scrimmages, which is really when guys separate from from others, not just at quarterback, but any position. So that's not to say that can't happen, but I still think it's Julian's job to lose. And, our latest impression was, that Julian had the better day.
So far from the two quarterbacks, and honestly, even Tavian St. Clair, what are the things that most impressed you about the three quarterbacks?
Well, make no mistake about it. Of the three, Tavian is probably the most physically impressive. If you look at Tavian, he looks like the prototype that you would want to play quarterback, at the highest of levels in college football. Just from, so he's a little bit thicker. He has the athleticism as well to look like he could be a factor in both elements of the offense. So it's impressive. And Ryan said in the past, going back to the spring, that the only thing holding Tavian back is experience, and that's true. And I really haven't seen that come to fruition necessarily in the moments we've seen him in camp, but I can only imagine when they go back and review the film, some of the things that maybe he just doesn't pick up on. But when you just watch him just throw the football around and move around, and especially when the way he throws on the run, which was a strength of his, and was one of the big reasons why he shot up recruiting rankings as well. It's impressive. I asked this question back in the spring and spring practice when Ryan talked about experience being the one thing holding him back. If there was any way you could simulate experience, and Ryan said he would love to talk for an hour about the ways he's tried to, even going into his NFL days, try to simulate experience. And there's just no real way to do it other than just throwing him out there in scrimmage settings and practice, and certainly in games. So Tavian's behind, but physically he certainly is the most impressive of the three. With Julian, you just noticed just the pure passing, the pure arm talent, the effortless release, beautiful tight spirals. He displayed a really strong accuracy on Saturday. There was a drill where they were just throwing, go routes into the end zone, and he just dropping them in bucket time and time again. Just a beautiful ball, and dropping them in the bucket to end the end zone. Guys not having to slow up, catching them stride. Just again, take that for what it's worth. They're throws on air to receivers that are uncovered. So, but again, you just see when Julian throws the football. It looks a little bit different, and I know people will say that, and you're like, well, what do you mean by that? I don't know how to explain it. I just know when you watch Julian throw the football, it just looks cleaner. And then Lincoln's a combination of, what I think Tavian's going to be and what I think Julian is, what he is now for the most part, in the sense that, he looks like a great athlete who maybe is still not quite the pure passer that Julian is, but capable enough. Don't get me wrong, but certainly brings another element to the offense. And I've told people this before. If in another world, if Chip Kelly doesn't leave Ohio State, Lincoln Keenan fits everything that you would want, from a Chip Kelly offense. But and we are where we're at. So again, if you're looking for a pure passer and a guy who just oozes, talent with throwing the football, it's Julian without question. But with a year of experience under his belt, with I guess I should say 2 really years of experience under his belt for Lincoln and being in the program, he certainly, if he doesn't, he looks like he has plenty of confidence, and I can only imagine that he does. But he certainly exudes confidence out there. It looks like he's in control of things as well. I just tend to believe that Julian has a higher ceiling than Lincoln does.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I also agree with that. For Julian, have the higher ceiling, especially like when you watch I was watching a clip of them throwing the football, and don't get me wrong, like I think it was the clip of them throwing the deep balls, the first air.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can clearly see, I think, because Lincoln's a bigger, he doesn't have to lean, but he doesn't have to use much effort, I guess, into getting the ball down there as Julian does. But Julian's release, of course, is very, very quick. Over the last few years, Ryan Day always talks about when it comes to quarterbacks, and everyone thinks that Ryan's going to name a quarterback before the fall. He's never done it.
Right.
This is not what he's going to do. I think the only time he hasn't was because CJ Stroud came back, and well, of course, there was no reason to. So, but he always talks about high level consistency. Yeah. Right now, who do you, unless you're not seeing it at all, who's showing that more right now?
Well, you're absolutely right. Ryan loves to say, he's looking for a guy who's going to make the routine plays routinely and take care of the football. So those are the 2 things. Now, look, I'm pretty sure Julian got picked off in one of maybe it was a 7-on-7 portion on Saturday, which is going to win him no favor with Ryan or with Billy Fessler in the quarterback room. So there's still that element as well. Lincoln got picked off, I believe, on Friday in one of those sessions. So, which, look, they're going to happen. I'm not saying that's a damning thing by any means, but Ryan talks about winning, making those routine plays routinely and protecting the football, and then goes on to, being good on third downs and in the red zone. So, which we haven't seen a lot of the situational football yet in terms of third downs or just strictly red zone stuff. So I can't speak to that. So consistency wise, I wouldn't say one has been more consistent than the other, because I've seen good and bad from both. I think on Saturday, Julian was certainly more consistent of the 2. So if you just want to take our most recent showing and what we saw then, I would definitely say Julian was the more consistent of the 2 there. But just over the stretch of 3 practices that we've seen, I wouldn't say one's been, more consistent than the other.
So moving on to another position, offensive line. So I've kind of just assumed, about a month or so back, they said that Austin Cerebell, who's also awarded the Iron Buckeye Award, which is a big deal for
Yeah.
those who don't know. They say he's going to start. Now, the question was whether it be right guard or right tackle for me. And is it going to be right tackle for him? Then Tegra kind of solidify that right guard spot?
That's the way I feel. I was on the radio on Sunday yesterday, and they asked about the offensive line, and I just went ahead and said I believe that the offensive line is solidified. If you ask me right now, if I had to bet it, I would say the 5 they're solidified. It's going to be Luke, Carson, and Tegra in the middle, which we all feel strongly that probably are, just with the returning experience. And the question is those 2 tackles. I think Ethan Onyanwa, he better start at left tackle, because when you look at this guy, he's going to be a future first-round pick. If Tyler Bowen's any good at all at developing offensive linemen, Ethan Onyanwa is going to be a first-round pick, because he is truly the prototype of what you want from a cornerstone left tackle, especially now that he's slimmed down and he's put a lot of work in the offseason to get his body right. And then on the flip side, Austin's going to start somewhere. He's done everything. Ryan said at every turn, whether he was asked about Austin or not, he finds a way to bring Austin up, and has since spring practice. So Austin's going to start. He's done everything to get himself ready to start, as Ryan said. So I can only assume that's at right tackle, which is where he's working now. Now, the caveat being, I guess the one thing you could say is, there were times last year where Tegra was up and down. So if they feel like Austin gives them a better, more consistency at right guard, a guy like Ian Moore or even Philip Daniels, the other transfer they brought in, those 2 guys, if they can get the job done at right tackle and they feel better about that, I can see that happening. But I've got to believe that Tegra is going to take some kind of step forward from what he did last year, having started basically a whole season. And if he does, he takes any step forward whatsoever, he's one of their 5 best offensive linemen, which makes Austin your starting right tackle. So yeah, long story short, I think from left to right, Ethan Onyanwa, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, Tegra Shabola, and Austin Searville is your starting offensive line. And I would be very surprised if that's not the case when they take the field against Texas on August 30th.
You brought up a name I actually wanted to bring up when it comes to just the depth of the offensive line spot. You brought up Philip Daniels.
Yeah.
How has he been performing here early in camp? And then another name I want to ask you about, a guy I not personally have close ties to, but we're from the same area here in West Michigan, Gabe Van Sickle, who I'm very high on. Northwestern commit before out of Coopersville, was about 10 minutes away from where I live. But yeah, committed to Northwestern, came to Ohio State. What do you see out of those 2 guys at the guard spot?
Yeah, look, Gabe Van Sickle could find himself, in the 2 deep. To be honest with you, he's doing really well. He could absolutely find himself on the 2 deep as one of those, first guys in if there's an injury, depending on how they want to restructure the offensive line. As we saw last year, they could toy. They had the versatility again this year that I wasn't sure that they had last year. The depth I didn't think they had. Frankly, I didn't think they had the depth that they had last year, and maybe they didn't necessarily, but they were able to move some guys around that were already still in the starting lineup. They have the same thing again. Austin Searville being a big part of that, because he can play both guard and tackle. But they have depth in terms of not having to switch a lot around as well. And Gabe Van Sickle is absolutely one of those guys. Philip Daniels, he's been up and down for me. I think at times in the spring game he just didn't look very good. Now, frankly, that's a tough sell to get there that late and try to find your footing at a place like Ohio State and then go out and perform in front of 60,000 people or whatever it was for the spring game. I've seen more up and down from Philip Daniels, running primarily with the 2s, obviously, in camp this year. So, or this past week. So I still think that he's a solid depth piece, but I will also say that, Ian Moore is, if I had to guess, if there was, if one of those tackles got hurt and they didn't shuffle it around or anything, and they were just bringing somebody, from behind those guys, Ian Moore is probably the next tackle in there. And oh, by the way, I don't know if he gets there by the end of camp, but Jake Cook, a true freshman, looks fantastic. And I know, the idea of a true freshman playing significantly for, a team at that level is tough to get to, but just for what it's worth, he looks great, and without having watched film or, being able to talk to Tyler Bowen. We talked to Tyler Bowen next week, next week. So it'll be fun to ask him about Jay Cook and a lot of these guys, but he looks good. Gabe's been really good. I'll tell you another name that's been really impressive. He was especially impressive on Saturday was Javon McFadden. So he was, some of their positional drill stuff that they did, some of the matchups he had against some of the guys that are going to play significant snaps for Ohio State on the defensive line, he was winning. He was just stoning some guys, just flat out stoning some guys in those one-on-one matchups. So it was impressive to see from him as well. Certainly not a guy that I thought I'd be talking about, especially this early in camp, but he was impressive, and I wasn't the only one that took notice of it either. So look, the Ohio State offensive line, the depth there, they're in a really good place. And I can't believe we're having this conversation after last year, because I couldn't have been more down on where the offensive line was depth-wise last year, and their lack of their inability, frankly, to recruit at the position and restock those cupboards. But it's in a really good spot now, it appears, and especially so if they hit on these transfers. And I think they did for sure, at least on Ethan.
So last thing I want to ask you about here on the offense, guys like Jeremiah Smith, recently a lot of the roster came out. He's up to 223 pounds, which is just insane. But you have him, Brandon Ennis out there, Carnell Tate. The second group of guys, probably looking around like Mylan Graham. I'm over blanking on names. Freshman Quincy, thank you. In that second, who's performing there, and who do you think is going to kind of like shift themselves into being that fourth, fifth guy?
It's so interesting. Obviously, we do this every year because of how much talent is in that room year after year. I couldn't be higher on Mylan Graham. I know people are aware of him, and certainly after the spring game, people took notice of what he did and how he looks. But I continue to be high on it. I continue to. I insist that at some point, during the season, he'll just become a household name. I understand that it's kind of seems blocked in terms of his ability to get enough snaps to do that. But every time I watch Mylan Graham, particularly when I watch Mylan Graham with the ball in his hands after the catch, I just think there's no way that Brian Hartline doesn't find a way to get that guy involved in the offense on a consistent basis, because I think I'm comfortable with saying outside of Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham has more, top end talent or a higher ceiling than anybody else in that receiver room. And I know Carnell Tate's a fantastic player. Make no mistake about it. Carnell Tate's as solid as they come in all aspects. And so because of that guy is going to A, have a great season this year, and B, make a lot of money in the NFL and play 10, 12 years because he's solid in every aspect. There's no area with Carnell Tate that, you have to worry about with him. But I think Mylan Graham's top-end game-breaking talent is higher than anybody not named Jeremiah Smith. So how they get that on the field, if that is indeed true, I have no idea what that looks like. I don't know how many snaps he gets, but I continue to beat the drum that there's just no way that they can keep Mylan Graham off the field. And again, I understand Brandon Ennis is a great player as well, and Brandon is more going to be more of that slot guy, and Mylan's more truly an outside guy, but. I just think that Mylan has to get on the field because I think that's too good of an asset, too good of a weapon to keep off of it. And then Quincy's going to be in the two deep. Quincy's going to be in the two deep as a true freshman. I asked Jeremiah about it in spring practice, and he said Quincy's definitely next up. So everything we've seen, all indications are he is indeed next up. He looks like he's physically ready for the role now, and just. As such as life at Ohio State, he's stuck behind some really, really good players, but he looks physically ready to do it now. And I think he'll be on the two deep, which means he's an injury away from, announcing himself to the college football world as a true freshman.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we move on to the defense, everybody, please be sure to go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can make sure you see all the content that we have here at Ohio State, the Voice to College Football. So now on to defense, and I guess the pressing matter is the defensive line.
Yeah.
A few guys I want to start with. We'll go from the outside, work toward the inside. Guys like Bo Atkinson. How's he acclimating to the team right now? And then my next question is Kenyatta Jackson Jr. For guys like us that have been they've been known for about Kenyatta. Yeah. We know he's a freak athlete, top 100 player coming out of high school. Surprisingly, has waited his turn. And because in this day and age, that's not normal for a guy of his talent to be doing so. What are you seeing out of those two guys?
You're absolutely right.
Actually, I had Caden Curry in there because
for sure. Well, you're absolutely right about Kenyatta. First and foremost, that it's becoming a little bit of a rarity in this day and age for a guy of his talent, of his recruiting profile, to be able to willing to wait his turn. I know he's gotten some looks and he's gotten some opportunities. Even going back to his freshman year, but especially last year, but they were limited. He's waited his turn, and on the short list, people ask me, who I'm high on, or some people to watch out for that maybe aren't already household names. There's about 3 or 4 that I would rattle off, and Kenyatta is one of the first two out. I think he's primed for a 10.5, 11 sack season this year. I think he's truly going to be one of the premier edge rushers in college football. So that's a good place to start. I think Kenyatta is the real deal. He looks fantastic. He looks explosive. He looks strong. He looks the part. And I have every reason to believe that he's going to become one of those premier guys. But past that, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You think that, Bo Atkinson, he looks good. From 3 practices, I can't tell you that he is or isn't going to be, but he certainly looks the part. He looks like he's comfortable. You hope he is, because he's going to have to be, because he's probably that third edge behind Caden Curry. And again, Caden Curry's a solid guy. I don't know what Caden Curry's top end talent is, or the kind of performance he can go out and have this season, what the best of the best looks like from him. But I know he's going to be solid, and I know that he's going to benefit from Kenyatta being the game record that I think he can be this year. So I know that Bo's going to be a really good change up if they go back to running some more of the rushman stuff that maybe they didn't do as much of last year as they have in the past. Then Bo's going to be out there as part of that as well. And I would assume, I tell you what, we're talking on Saturday, some of the guys that, we expected to, some of the new guys that we expected to maybe make a run at, maybe not playing like significant playing time, but certainly make a case that they would be ready to play early on as true freshmen. Zion Grady, who we all call Ziggy Grady, is a guy that, would I be shocked if he found his way onto the field for some of those freshman packages as that fourth pass rusher? I wouldn't be shocked at all. But what I do know is that if there's any injuries on the edge, that he's next in line. He's an injury away from, as a true freshman, being a guy who's called on to contribute significantly immediately. And he's having a good early start to his camp, and looks like he would be ready to do that. So yeah, Bo, certainly Bo looks the part and has looked good so far, but it's still too early to tell. Caden solid. And then behind that, it's, we'll see. Logan George obviously had a pretty good spring. I'm not sure what they're actually going to get out of him as well. But if I was going to go out on a limb, I would say Zion Grady's probably that 5th guy there. If you want to kind of round it off at a 5-man group.
Awesome. Zion Grady, I wasn't expecting to hear so much about him. That from coming out of the spring into the fall, but at the end of the day, of course, we're all going to be happy about that as Buckeye fans. Next, of course, the defensive tackle spot. Caden McDonald. I think that's the only way to just shake your head about it.
Yeah.
Caden McDonald, Edric Houston, the 2 big Georgia boys there in the middle. I think most of us are very we're fine with that. There's nothing else to talk about that. We know what those guys are. Edric Houston had a little mishap on his ankle. It looks like he's gonna be fine. When that happened, I wasn't too worried about that. And even if I was like, look, man, just sit your arse down. Don't do anything else. We need you in a few weeks.
Yep.
But everyone else behind him, that'd be Moore, Smith Jr., son of the late great Will Smith, the 2002 national championship team, and the rest of the guys in that group. So far, have you seen anything coming out of there?
No, I guess I think pretty much everybody knows this by now, but just in terms of Edric Houston, next day he was back out dressed. He didn't participate in any of the drills, which obviously was to be expected, but at least the fact that he was out there and was dressed was a very good indication that it wasn't anything significant, or they wouldn't trot him out there in front of all us as media to sit there and speculate and take video and stuff on. And then on Saturday, he was out there again, and he was actually jogging pretty good. Again, not really participating in practice, but he was still jogging pretty good. So Edric's fine. They're going to be cautious with him. Obviously they have to, but just if anybody was still wondering out there, he's fine. I think any Ohio State feels really good about the Edric Houston K-Mac combination in the middle, and as they should. The question is, especially for a guy like K-Mac, who is obviously a big dude, is are they going to be ready? Can they physically play 45, 50 plays if need be? Because if this depth doesn't start to materialize, you're going to have to call on them to do that, and that's the question. And even if it does materialize to some degree, they might still have to do that. So while we know the talents of those 2 guys, are they prepared to increase their snap counts? Because last year, there were guys who were used as rotational pieces. Now they're going to have to be those guys that Tyleek and Ty Hamilton were last year. And are they ready physically to do that? That remains to be seen. We won't know that until not even the Texas game. Well, we might, because it might be a hot day, a noon kickoff. We might know late in that game
Right.
what kind of physical shape they're in to be able to do that. But nothing from camp really is going to tell us that. Look, behind them, no, there's been nothing. There's been no indication that anybody's emerging there, that they're in better shape depth-wise than we thought they were. We know the names: Tywan Malone, Jason Moore, behind Edric Houston, those guys. Will Smith is going to probably be expected to be the guy behind K-Mac. So we know the names. I'd be lying if I said that there was anything that made me confident that those guys are going to be anything better than serviceable behind them. And I'll be honest with you as well. Like I hope that their depth just gets to good enough. I think anybody holding out hope that it's going to become good depth, like that they're going to be good, in terms of the depth of that defensive tackle room, I think you're kidding yourselves. I just hope it can get to the point over these next few weeks into the season that it's good enough, that it's not a hindrance, that it doesn't hold them back. Because when you look at what Ohio State has at linebacker, and certainly in the secondary as well, it would be a real shame if, how good they're going to be in those two levels, that it kind of gets spoiled by the fact that they can't hold up front. So I just hope it gets to a point where it's good enough, and that it's not something that, like, an Achilles heel that really holds them back. And part of that's going to be, again, how much they can play, K-Mac and Edric, how long they can be on the field, and how many snaps they can play. And then also they have to develop that depth to just become serviceable, to get those guys off the field at times.
And the last guy I want to ask about here is CJ Hicks.
Yeah.
Ironically, so 2 years ago, me and my best friend from middle school, we actually started a show called Scarlet and Blue Show, where we talk about Ohio State Michigan football. And this would have been, I think it was Hicks' sophomore year, where I kind of just looked at him at middle linebacker. I said, I don't think he's a Mike linebacker. I think he's got to play edge. And then lo and behold, here we are. And also, when Matt Patricia first got on to the scene here in Columbus, those two seemed to click. They had a good rapport. What are you seeing out of CJ Hicks right now as an edge rusher? And he's 6'3", 233 now, they say. So what do you see out of him right now? How is he being used?
When I bring up CJ Hicks to a lot of people, they roll their eyes because there's some CJ Hicks fatigue, because it seems like every season we go into and saying, like, hey, CJ's looked good. I think this is the year where CJ really, turns a corner, because he's too good. He's too talented. And at that size and his ability to move to not finally put it all together. So with that being said, I'm telling you again, like, CJ Hicks looked really good on Saturday. He looked good on Friday. He's moving around well. I agree with you that I think this was probably always, where he was destined to be, if they were going to fully utilize his talents, or at least some kind of hybrid role. He's a perfect kind of player and body for what Matt Patricia has always done throughout his career. A guy who they could do some, different things with and get a little creative with. So it's now or never for CJ Hicks. We know that. I think he's in the spot that he needs to be in. Where he fits into that depth, and we just got on talking about defensive in depth, and frankly, I forgot to mention him, but that's not because he hasn't flashed or looked impressive at times in what we've seen in camp. So where he fits into that, I don't entirely know. I guess he's probably that fourth guy. I mentioned Ziggy potentially being that fifth guy. It's probably CJ as that fourth guy, and there's your five there. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, I understand people are tired of hearing about CJ Hicks because every year we do this, but for whatever it's worth, he's looked pretty good in camp, and he looks comfortable there. And we know the kind of athlete he is. So it makes all the sense in the world to think, okay, well, this is when he finally puts it together. I'm not going to hold my breath on it. I'm rooting for him. I hope it does. And I think it's completely reasonable to think that it does when you watch him in the way he's practicing right now, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. I don't think anybody should. But here's the hoping.
So moving on to the next position I want to talk about was safety. Now, we all know that Caleb Downs is the guy who's going to be there, who, in my estimation, second best player in college football, best defensive player in college football. I think he's a very special talent, if not the smartest. I think he's one of the smartest players in college football. But that the other guy, the guy next to him, now, of course, Malik Hartford, Jalen McClain, those are the two guys mostly being talked about. They're mostly getting the reps there. What are you seeing out of that position? Who do you think is taking that push forward to take that spot? And if not, maybe they're playing different positions. I know Malik can more play like a down safety, kind of like Caleb does. But what are you seeing out of those two?
Well, I guess the caveat to all this is maybe those two guys are playing on the field side by side because we've seen a ton of Caleb Downs in the nickel through these first 3 days, and there were even times last year where we saw some of that, and Jordan Hancock kind of rotated back up, more towards a true safety role. So we've seen a decent amount of Caleb Downs in that nickel spot, which has Jalen McClain and Malik Harford on the field together. Which speaks to both of those guys' talents and both of those guys' readiness to play this year if need be. If we're talking about a true, two safety set where Caleb's in that strong safety role and who that free safety is going to be, it seems to me, and this just could be me, personally, it seems to me like maybe Jalen McClain's kind of past Malik Hartford to potentially be that other safety on the field. And again, that's not saying anything of Malik's inability to play because they're comfortable, obviously, enough to put both of those guys on the field if they want to put Caleb in that nickel position. So both those guys have obviously proven that they're ready to play. Heck, Malik Hartford started a couple games at Ohio State. People forget that he's made a couple of starts already.
Yep.
But it seems to me like Jalen, if they're going to have two safeties on the field, obviously they're going to at times. They're not just going to run, purely with Caleb at the nickel. It seems like Jalen's that guy right now. Now there's still much with camp, but nothing would surprise me. As a matter of fact, when somebody asked me this coming out of spring, I still thought Malik was that guy who would ultimately start aside Caleb Downs. But just from what we've seen through these first 3 days, it seems like Jalen might be making a push to be that guy as a sophomore, and that's says a lot about Jalen. But the bottom line is all three of those safeties are going to play a lot for Ohio State this year, just depending on what they want to roll out there.
Right. So the last two questions I have for you. Give me 3 players who if you've mentioned them already, that's fine. But 3 players that are really impressing you right now after the first week, and then give me a couple freshmen who are also doing the same.
If I had to go with just 3 players in general and not mention, well, I'll stick with guys that a couple of guys that I already mentioned. And in all honesty, CJ Hicks is one of those guys that I've been really impressed with. Now, to say I'm impressed with them, I have my own set of things that make me impressed by them. A lot of what we can go off right now is just basically, their physical body type, how they look coming out of the summer. The last time we've seen them was the spring, so how they look. And right now, and then certainly a lot of positional stuff as well. They put the pads on, I believe, today. They were off. Yeah, they were off yesterday. I think today was the first day they truly had pads on. But CJ has been one of those guys. Milan's been one of those guys. I'm trying to think of some guys that maybe I have. Kenyatta's certainly been one of those guys as well. Max Clare has been one of those guys that really stood out to me. But I'm trying to think of guys that maybe people, obviously the obvious ones have stood out to me. Arbel Reese, I mentioned earlier that I had about 3 guys that people want to ask me, who's about to take off this year, and I said Kenyatta's one of them. Arbel's the other. I think Arbel Reese might be an All-American at the end of the year. Would not be surprised in the least if he's an All-American.
I'm with you on that.
I think he's about to be that good, and we know that physically he's a freak. So those are probably a lot of the guys. Freshman wise, Turbo Rogers, he was obviously a late enrollee, so he just got here just before camp, but he's not wasting any time showing why they call him Turbo A and why they wanted him in that class. He's the real deal in terms of speed. Moments, putting the ball on the ground, which obviously they're gonna have to iron out, but he's not the first freshman running back who's had a hard time with ball security, but when he holds on to the football, he lives up to the Turbo nickname. So he's been impressive. I mentioned Javon McFadden, Quincy Porter as well. I'll give you another name that what you want to talk about being on the 2 deep, and a guy who is one injury away from being a significant contributor to this Ohio State team this year is Riley Pettichon. Riley Pettichon is going to be in the 2 deep at linebacker, behind Sonny in that will spot. So I've said this before. I think Riley was probably my favorite recruit of that entire class. I know a lot of people talk about Devin Sanchez, and he's the real deal as well. Make no mistake about it. But Riley's been my favorite recruit in that class, and he's making a name for himself pretty quickly in camp this year. And I think he'll be on that 2 deep. I think he's the guy behind Sonny. If anything were to happen to Sonny, he's going to be on the field.
Awesome. Well, again, Dillon, I appreciate you for coming on here, giving us some of the knowledge you over here shedding light to what's been going on in the first week of fall camp. Actually, you know what?
Yeah,
I forgot. There was one last thing I want to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
So, I spoke briefly about Matt Patricia earlier.
Yeah.
And here in your article, that you wrote yesterday
Mhm.
on that, Patricia. It says here, Matt says, we have great coaches who are here and were here last year. I think it's my job to make sure I'm adapting and learning what we did really well last year, because obviously it was great. So far, there's been a lot of mixed reviews. I won't say mixed reviews, but mixed feelings about Matt Patricia. Me personally, I am happy that he's here. I when he got here, I said, there's a few things I try to look at when it comes to somebody. I saw, the beard isn't as big,
Yep.
the body isn't as big,
Yep.
and the hat went from backwards to forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about Matt Patricia, and how is he adapting in Columbus?
Well, I was a fan of the hire in the first place. I was a fan of the hire then. I'm a fan of the hire now. Getting to talk to him throughout spring practice. Obviously, I've never talked to him before then, but it just seemed to me, and I know I saw people say this in the spring who had talked to him in the past, and they were listening to some of the things that were coming out of spring practice from him. He just seemed like he was in a different place. He seemed like he was so much happier with where he was at. I think that the time off that he had from football in general probably did him wonders. So he seems like he's in a really good place. Again, that could just be me, imagining that, because I never had anything to go off of in terms of what he was like before then. But he seems like he's in a great place. And he seems like he's truly, look, Matt Patricia, we've been blessed at Ohio State to have some truly great defensive minds, going back to Jeff Hafley in 2019. And certainly Jim Knowles is a great defensive mind. Matt Patricia is a defensive genius. Just listening to him talk the game, it's truly a joy to listen to him talk defensive football. So from that aspect, he has a wealth of knowledge to do that. But it seems like he's genuinely interested and willing to be collaborative with the rest of that coaching staff to maximize what they have there. And look, frankly, that wasn't always the case, in years past in terms of being a true collaboration. I think some of those stories are out there, are well documented, about some of the button of heads. So I think Matt Patricia was generally willing and interested in doing that, and having this collaboration with a great defensive staff, which, again, to that point, as he talked about, these are guys who have already done it and already coached these guys at the highest of levels, and developed them at the highest of levels. So I think Matt Patricia is just a wonderful maestro, if you will, to pull all these strings. I think he's the perfect coach at the perfect time for the personnel they have. When you talk about guys like Sonny Styles and Arbel Reese, those guys are tailor-made for what Matt Patricia loves to do defensively, and Caleb Downs for that matter as well, which is why you're seeing a lot of Caleb Downs in the nickel. All those things are just beautiful, for what Matt Patricia likes to do. So I like the hire then. I love it now, as we've seen a little bit more of how he might utilize some of these guys. And he seems like he's in a really good place. So I know it was a polarizing move. There are people out there who hated it. There are a lot of people who wanted to, who just judged Matt Patricia off of his failed head coaching stint, which, if everybody could go be a head coach in the NFL, then there would be no coaches left in college football, because everybody would have went and done it, by now. The guy, it didn't go well for him. I understand that there were some stories, about some, maybe how he rubbed some people wrong in the locker room, some of his players. I don't know if that's the case or not. You're not going to see any of that at Ohio State. For all I know, for Matt Patricia's the biggest, a-hole, ever. But I highly doubt, even if he wants to be, he's going to do that, because this is kind of a big opportunity for Matt Patricia to get back into coaching if he still wants to get to coach. So he needs this to go well. So it seems like it's a home run hire by all accounts. I expect it to be. And then with that personnel and the talent they have, I think Ohio State's going to be really good defensively. And all those people who poo-pooed the move, probably you won't be able to find them. They'll be deleting tweets and all this stuff, and you won't be able to, keep those receipts. Or I hope people did keep those receipts.
I screenshot.
There you go. Yeah, I'm glad you did. So hold people accountable for that, because I think it's going to be just fine for the Buckeyes.
Well, again, Dillon, really appreciate you coming on here. Hopefully look forward to having you on here soon to talk Ohio State football and fall camp. Again, everybody, if you would like to follow him, go ahead and follow him on X at DillonDavis56. And also, if you want to see any of his articles, you can find him at the Delaware Gazette. Again, Dillon, thank you, and look forward to talking to you again.
Always enjoy it. Anytime. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, yeah, bro. I hope you all enjoyed that. That was really helpful. Again, I'm in the state of North, so I'm not usually able to get all that in-depth stuff that Dillon has, and so I'm really glad he can come here, bring that for you all. But before we continue, get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level by partnering with the Voice of College Football and discuss how you also can reach your target market. The Voice of College Football is a growing network with a large following, so let's find out how we can help you grow with us. Check out the experience of one of our current partners, that being Win AC, posted here on the screen. And just like our VOCFB community, we are here to deliver for you. Contact us at sponsorships@vocfb.com. Again, that is sponsorships at vocfb.com today. Well, real quick before we get going, I want to give a few shout outs here. Yeah, I see my guy John is here. Well, all right, both Johns are in here, and they're very good grief, guys. You guys are in here just oh, good grief. Penn State, I see you in here, man. Glad you guys can make it in here. Jam, you're in here. Day one, my boy. Glad to see you here also. Aaron, Sage. Again, everyone, glad you guys are. Burks, you know, you're my guy, the greatest Ohio State, Michigan. What do we call it, Burks? You got, I'm blanking on the word right now, but it's the best partnership you ever find in the Ohio State Wolverine rivalry. Real quick, I want to go through some of these starred posts I saw here. Real quick, yeah. Penn State Sports Talk. He said, "I want to hear more about Matty Ice. Think he'll be motivated to prove he can coach Big Ten football." And I agree. You know, I think for guys like him who have been somewhat removed from the NFL game and have a second chance at life here in the college game, especially if you get it at Ohio State, you know, dude, there's nowhere else to do it, man. And I think right now for Ohio State, you look at what we did with Jim Knowles. You know, he's the highest paid defensive coordinator now. You got Chip Kelly. He goes to the NFL. He's the highest paid offensive coordinator. Man, listen, Ohio State's a free stimulus check. That's exactly what it is. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. Day one case says Turbo needs to be our kick return. I agree. You know, I think there's a lot of guys that can vie for that spot. But I think Turbo's going to be one of those guys that we and Dillon just talked about. You know, he's definitely showed some promise. I think he's definitely one of those athletes that we have to get on the field. And kick return and punt return are those places where guys can really show what they can do. I completely agree with that. Sage says this backfield will have several combinations on the backfield. On the field, I agree. You know, when you look at guys like CJ Donaldson, who, by the way, I think CJ Donaldson is going to be one of the more. I think he's one of the more underrated players right now in the Big Ten, running back wise. You know, coming out of West Virginia, had back-to-back 700 plus seasons. And I think in the same situation that Judkins is in, of course, not saying he's the same player as Judkins, the same situation. Back then, everyone was saying, well, look at Judkins' yards per carry. And in my estimation, I was like, well, at Ohio State, this is going to be the best offensive line he's ever had. So I expect his yards per carry to go up. I expect his play to go up just the same way I do for CJ. And then also when you look at guys like Peoples, you know, some people are kind of down on him. I'm not sure why. I like Peoples. I think James Peoples is going to be that guy. I'm not going to look at, you know, I was in a space when we were talking about his freshman year. I'm not going to look at his freshman year. That's not what I care about to look at. When he got into the game, it's you know, the game is over. He's playing with the second string line guys that didn't have a lot of experience. So I think James Peoples is due for a big year. Guys like Bo Jackson, who I think is probably the most talented running back in the room, probably the most talented running back in the Big Ten. But that's just me saying that. I don't know anything. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then Aaron says I want to see Riley Pettyjohn week one. We're going to. I think guys like him, Quincy Porter, Devin Sanchez, those are the type of freshmen that are going to be impossible. Bo Jackson also. Those are going to be the type of freshmen that are going to be impossible to keep off the football field. And I think Riley Pettyjohn, you know, when you look at the athleticism that he has, the size that he has, really big linebacker that can move around, I think he's definitely going to get on that field. And honestly, it's going to be really cool to see him get on that field with this, you know, coming from Texas, see him get on the field with them. So we're gonna move on here. You know, this is something, you know, that came out today. The coaches poll, the top 25 came out. Now, this is really cool for me because, and mind you, I do think the AP poll is going to be a little bit different. I don't think Ohio State is going to be a top 2 team in the AP poll. I think they're going to be number 3. I think Penn State or Texas is going to be number 1. Excuse me, but here it is right here. The top 10: Texas, Ohio State, Penn State. And by the way, I think the reason in Penn State Sports Talk, I know we have you in here. I think the reason Ohio State is ahead of Penn State due to this being the coaches poll. I think this has more to do with I don't like that. I think this has more to do with coaches distrusting Ohio State more, trusting Ryan Day more, giving him the credit for being the championship coach that he is now. You know, he's won the Big Ten more times than James Franklin has, of course. So yeah, I think it has more to do with that. Then you have Georgia at 4, Notre Dame 5, Clemson at 6, Oregon at 7, Alabama at 8, LSU at 9, and Miami at 10. A few other things to mention in here. We do have Illinois at number 12, the Wolverines at 14, Indiana at 19, which I'm not surprised to see that, but I'm glad to see them in there because I think they deserve to be in there, and that rounds out the Big Ten. So my question to you all, which I want to talk about here, is who do you think is ranked too high, and who do you think is ranked too low? So I have my list here, and I know for all of us in here, I think a lot of us might have the same answers. For some of us, it might vary, and of course that depends on what you know about the rest of these teams. But this is the list I have right here. For my too high list, we're going to start with Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, I think, has the best running back in college football. I think they have I think they have the best corner in college football. I think they have a top 10 to 15 defense. Really love with Ohio State it used to be linebacker Mark Freeman is doing there. I think he's on, especially look at their recruiting class. They're on their way, but clearly they have a quarterback situation there we don't know about. Also, outside of Great House, I'm not sure what the rest of that wide receiver unit looks like. The offensive line, I think, will be fine. But yeah, I just think Notre Dame's too high, and it has more to do with who's behind them, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Next, I have Miami. Shout out my boy Mays, man. Shout out my boy Mays. Just saw him get in here. Daniel, I just saw what you put in here. I'm gonna hold that because I do want to bring that up because I completely agree with you, and I did not have them down. Miami is next. When it comes to Miami, now I think they're gonna be fine at quarterback. I think he gets way too much hate, but the problem is the wide receiver unit. They lost all of their guys essentially, whether it be in the transfer portal or to the draft. I just gotta see it. The defense I think will be improved from last year, but my biggest thing is when it comes to Mario Cristobal, do I believe he can have them not just motivated, but do I think he can coach throughout a whole season and keep that same level? I'm really skeptical about that. I would have Miami somewhere around the 19 to 22 range. Next team I have is Tennessee, just like Daniel Henry. And by the way, man, good to see you win here. By the way, Daniel, I disagree with you on Florida. Now, actually, no, Florida may be too high, but I am high on Florida this season. I do think there's a chance that they can make the playoffs, depending on if Billy can coach or not, which is a big thing, of course. But Tennessee, I'm down on them all the way. I don't even think Tennessee should be in the top 25. If I'm being completely honest with you, I'm. It's not about being too low on them. I just think they don't belong. I don't think they're better than 24 of the teams in here, and then we'll get to that 25th team here in a little bit. Kansas State, I have them too high. I don't think Kansas State should be ranked. That I have Kansas State somewhere around the 25 range. I would be fine with Kansas State at 25. Of course, really good quarterback they have there. Last year he struggled. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about Kansas State. Now, do I think they can win the Big 12? Yes, but I do have Arizona State winning it. But yeah, I don't think they should be right there. I do think Texas A&M is going to be better than them. I think Iowa State is going to be better than them. I think BYU is going to be better than them. I think Texas Tech is going to be better than them. So yeah, that's how I feel about them. And then Boise State, I just don't see it. I don't know why they're there. And the funny thing is, guys, I can't tell you a damn thing about their team. All I know is that they lost the number 1 or 2 player in the country last year, and who literally without Ashton Genty, that was a 7-win team max. And so I just don't see how they're gonna be better than last year. I don't see it. Now, on the teams that I think are ranked too low, Oregon. I think Oregon's ranked too low. I would have Oregon. I would say, huh. I would put Oregon at number 5. I would move Georgia down, and I would move Notre Dame down, like I said earlier. Um, and like and Jam says right here, Georgia's too high, QB is an unknown, and I agree. Now, what I do believe about Georgia, real quick, is that last year offensive line wasn't as good, with the run game wasn't as good because of that. They also weren't that good stopping the run last year, and last year they also led the nation in drop passes. Now, do I think all three of those things are going to be the same this year? No, I think all those three things are going to improve. With that being said, in this top 10, that's the quarterback I'm the lowest on. I would have more confidence in Georgia if they had CJ Carr, to be honest with you. So yeah, I agree with you right there, Jam. So yeah, Oregon. I think Oregon has the deepest defensive line in the country this upcoming season. I think that Dante Moore is a game. I think Dante Moore is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in college football, a top 10 quarterback in my opinion. Dante Moore out of King High School in Detroit, Michigan. Really good player. And, a lot of people like to talk about what happened at UCLA, but I'm not here to talk about that. Like, UCLA was a dog team. They were bad, not a lot of talent. He was thrown in there. I can't remember as a true freshman. I can't remember who the other quarterback was, but Chip Kelly kept bringing him in and out, in and out, in and out, game by game. You can't get any consistency doing that, and so in real reps doing that. So yeah, I think Oregon is ranked too low. BYU. So I went through their depth chart and their depth chart, and that's a senior laden team. I would actually have them, like I said, ahead of Kansas State. I would have them ahead of Iowa State. And I think that's as far as I would go. I'd actually possibly move SMU down. I probably should have had SMU on my rank too high list also. I would have moved them down. But yeah, I think BYU is going to shock a lot of people this year. When you have a bunch of 30-year-olds on your team, I think you're going to do pretty well. And then the team that I actually have winning the national championship, Clemson. I think they're too low. I truly believe Clemson should be number 4, and I would argue them being number 3. I think Cade Klubnik is possibly the best quarterback in college football. I think that they're going to have I think they have a top 3 to 5 wide receiver unit in the country, maybe the second best wide receiver unit in the country behind Ohio State's. They have one of the best defensive lines in college football and defense in general, and I think that I think Clemson's due for one. I think they are. A lot of people, they like to just get on Dabo Swinney, which is it's the popular thing to do. But at the end of the day, Dabo Swinney is one of the greatest college football coaches of all time. I think he's I would say he's the third best football coach since in this generation. So since 2000, I would say Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, and then him. So yeah. I think Clemson's ranked too low at 6, even though 6 isn't that far from 3 or 4. But like I said, I think Clemson is just that damn good. And then I have a team that's missing, and that's Oklahoma. You can't sell me anything that says Oklahoma is not a top 25 team coming to this country. And shout out to my guy Johnny. I know he's not high on my tier, but I am. John Mateer, he comes to Oklahoma, comes there also with his offensive coordinator, Brent Venables. I think it's good for him because now he can just focus on that defense, which he is. I still think a top 3 defensive mind in college football. He probably is the best defensive mind in college football. I won't say he's the best coordinator because, of course, he's the head coach now. Jaden Ott, he's the running back there out of Cal. I think he's a top 5 running back in college football. And also, you look back at last year, the offensive line was hurt all last year. Now that the thing with that, though, I will be honest with that. With that being said, all those guys are hurt last year, so now they're kind of back to square one. So we got to see what the offensive line looks like. But when you have a guy like John Mateer who can run for 100 yards in a game, I think that does help. And then also the wide receiver unit their top 6 guys in the wide receiver room got injured last season, like for the whole season. And I think that that's just bad luck, and I don't think that they're going to go through that again this upcoming season. So yeah, I think Oklahoma is. If I had to rank Oklahoma somewhere in here, it would be some spot somewhere between 12 and 15. We'll say 16. I would rank Oklahoma somewhere in between there. Again, I think Oklahoma. I don't know why Boise State gets ranked, but Oklahoma doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense to me, none at all. But to end the show here, I'm gonna go through what you all thought. Richie, Richie says Michigan too high. Here. Let me look at this again. Let's look at it again. So they have Michigan at 14. They should be ranked behind South Carolina. Ole Miss. Richie, I don't know. Because when I look at the teams behind them, SMU, Florida, I would actually probably put Florida ahead of them, but that's just me. Tennessee, I think they should be ranked ahead of. Indiana, I would do. I don't know. Look, I think there's a lot of mix up you could do in this, but I think for right now, I don't think that's a bad spot for them. I actually don't. I have no problem, honestly, with the Wolverines being ranked at 14. I think that's a pretty reasonable spot for them right now. I think that's pretty reasonable. Johnny says Florida will have 5 losses with that schedule. Maybe so. Maybe they won't. I think Lagway's. There's a possibility Lagway's just like Clay Klubnik. I think there's a chance that he's probably the best player in college football. And sometimes when you have the best player in college football, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you just win those games. And I think there's a chance they can. Now, is there a chance they have 5 losses with that schedule? You're damn right. I am not gonna shy away from that. There's a really good chance that they do this season. A shout out to my guy Matthew Miller of Texas at the Voice of College Show. Everybody, if you haven't, go ahead check them out. He says Notre Dame, UGA, Arizona State, Tennessee, Indiana, all overrated. Arizona State, I'm gonna completely disagree with you on that one. I'm not going there. No, this is a Dilly friendly channel. Pause. So no, I'm not gonna go with you on that one. Daniel agrees with Johnny. Says Florida got to prove it. Until then, I expect 6 and 6 out of them. No quarrels with saying there. Aaron says I don't see the Clemson hype, man. Just wait, because here's the truth of the matter. LSU that's how they're going to start their season. There's a good chance they win that game. Also, and that's going to be a tough game. Either one of those two teams could win that, of course. But after that, I think they're going to blow through their schedule. Of course, South Carolina is still in there. That's going to be a good game also. But I think there's a good chance that their ACC schedule I think there's a chance they win all those games by double digits. I really do. I really do. Let's see. Johnny also says now Oregon only returns 5 stars and Dante Moore improved shit. Don't care. Don't care. Go look at the Johnny and Johnny, you're my guy. Go do some research on Oregon and then come back. Because here's the truth of the matter is that's still the second most talented team in the Big Ten, and they have an easy schedule. See, my guy John says I also think we're going 10-2. How about that? I had a list, and I should probably find that sometime. But I had a list of all my dark horse playoff teams. I did have you guys in there, John. And my dark horse teams means I think you can go anywhere from 8-4, from 8-4 to 10-2. So yeah, I'm not upset with that. I'm not upset with that at all. Aaron Florida is way too low. Man, I agree with you. For everyone that doesn't know, go check out their running backs and their defense. Go check that out. They're going to win a lot of games because of that. I really do believe they can do that. Uh, Penn State Sports Sons act like a pro in practice. JJ not. That's funny. That's funny. Berg says Garrison, I agree. Dante Moore was a tough loss for Michigan when he committed to UCLA. I agree. And again, when you look at the reason why they had to go out, which I have no problem with, why they had to go out and pay what they did for Underwood to stay. You missed out on Dante. The next year, you missed out on CJ Carr. And by the way, like I cover high school football in the state. It's really rare that you have that coming out of the state of Michigan. Like the state of Michigan is not some hotbed for college football talent. It just isn't. So when you have those quarterbacks come out of your state and they leave out, and Michigan State too, I'm gonna throw you guys in there too. I mean, when that happens, you got to go out and do what you do. So yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, but the proof is in the pudding, bro. The proof is in the pudding. I think they're gonna be just fine. Yeah, and Jan brings us in here, says I saw that Richie Texas just lost an all lineman too. Yeah, here I'm gonna bring his name up here because I want to make sure I get this right because I talked to Matthew Miller about this, and he did bring this up because when I talked about their offensive line, as Matthew knows, I am prone to do. This could be a big loss. We don't know yet, and I hope he gets healthy soon. That's you never want to see a young guy get hurt like that. Yeah, what's that kid's name? Yeah, Andre Kojo. Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the big thing is that Brandon Baker, highly touted guy coming out of high school. They don't know what he is yet. Only has 65 snaps coming out of so far in his college career. So yeah, that's that's a loss, and but again, hopefully that kid gets better. Because again, you never want to see a kid go down like that. That's just all bad. That's just all bad. Daniel Henry says, I agree. Michigan too high, bro. I am man, y'all. Hey, man. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. Throw some smut on them. Throw smut on them. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. Richie said, shout out to my Michigan brother in the chat. Hey, shout out to you guys, man. Shout out to you guys. Matthew Miller says South Carolina overhyped to hell. They will be 7-5, 6-6. You know what? We'll talk about that at a later date. We'll talk about that at a later date. Oh man, real quick, man. Shout out to my boy Don B, man. Glad you were in here, man. It says Donnie Food Stamp. Hey man, good to see you here, bro. Yes, Burks. I predicted 9-3. Of course losing to us. Oklahoma. There was one more in there. Oh, USC or Nebraska. That's what I had. It was either USC or Nebraska. Yep. 2 away games. Of course, Nebraska, I think, has a good defense to catch you early in the season. I think Raiola is going to be a much better player this year, of course. Then when it comes to UCLA, I think UCLA is going to be a really, I think they're a dark horse team also. And that game is in Los Angeles, and, Big Ten teams don't do well out there. So, I think there's a good chance that happens. But everyone, thank you for showing up today. And again, if you haven't already, please like the video. Of course, that's all we ask monetarily. It helps the channel out a lot as we're trying to grow. Also, if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you share it to all your friends, family, and even your foes. Also, hey, you know what, guys? Hey, tomorrow, for all the Buckeye fans here, make sure you show up to John and TJ's show. And then also on Thursday for the call-in show with John, and Johnny. It's a fun time. It actually is a fun time to talk to those guys. It's good to see get the rivalry banter going, healthy rivalry banter. And if you haven't already, if you would like to become a member, please hit that join button, and you can see the tiers that we have there. The Block O Club, and of course, this upcoming season, I do have some players that have contacted me back, thankfully, on a possible interview. So really excited about that. Can't wait to hopefully bring that to you all. But if you'd like to join, hit the Block O Club. JT wasn't short because he damn sure wasn't, and we don't give a damn, and you know the rest. Well, everybody, again, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being part of the show. And as always, OH, IO.